Welcome, one and all, Super Wednesdays in the Holy Land, Holy Apple, and the Holy Hilltop of the Holy Apple. We are on the 8th day of the month of Adar, cutting close 6-7 days before the holiday of Purim. Our class today, why do Jews get plastered on Purim? About a 4 or 5 minute summary of last week, so you don't have to get nervous if you weren't around. Available last week, we give a quick summary in all our classes, so you don't have to necessarily see the first, second part. We keep you posted on it. Our class is based on a class that was given a few years ago by the head of the Yeshivat Hebron, a very prestigious yeshiva in Jerusalem, the head of the yeshiva of the Talmudic seminary. His name is Rabbi David Cohen, and much of what we're talking about is based on his 25 page lecture that he gave on the subject. Here and there we add different points that we learned from different sources, but mostly it's based on Rabbi David Cohen's talk. Okay. First question we ask is, it's very unusual that on Purim there is some kind of custom or law that a Jew is supposed to intoxicate themselves, where they do not realize the difference between the blessed Mordechai and the cursed Haman. That seems to be counterintuitive to everything that the Torah and Judaism stands for. One of Judaism's big flags, or red flags, is to stay away from all types of intoxicating beverages. Of course, we drink a little bit of wine on the Sabbath and holidays, but besides for that, it's definitely frowned upon, to say the least. So how come all of a sudden on Purim we have this custom or this law to get smashed, to get drunk, to the unbelievable level that you don't remember if it's Mordechai blessed or is Haman cursed? You don't remember that. That was our first question. Second question, we asked on Mordechai. Mordechai's actions are very questionable. He comes up and he tells Esther that she must enter the quarters of King Achashverosh, even though the law is in Persia that if you have not been invited to the quarters of the king in 30 days, you're not allowed to enter without an invitation. And if somebody still enters, then one would be executed. So what in the world is going on with Mordechai? Why is he pressuring Esther after she has not been called in 30 days? Why is he pressuring her to go in? More so, we know that the decree against the Jewish people happened in the month of Nisan, which means there's another 11 months till the decree will come into fruition. So what is Mordechai getting excited about? Even more unusual, is the fact that we are told in various sources that Esther was certain that it was only a matter of time, not a long time, that she would be invited into the chambers of the king. So we have 11 months to go. We have an Esther, the princess, that she is convinced that very shortly she will be invited into the king's quarters. So let's call a time out. Let's not put Esther's life in danger here. It's very unusual, Mordechai's behavior. Second Second question on Mordechai is that he says an unusual statement. He says that if you do not go right now, this minute, if you don't go into to see the king Achashverosh, not only will you be destroyed, but also the house of your father. The family of your father will be destroyed. It's unusual. What about her mother's family? Just the father's family? I mean, a person has two parents. Esther, like everybody else, has two parents. So, this is unusual. Why is Mordechai mentioning the descendants of Esther on her father's side, lineage? Next question we asked. We know that Jacob, he gave the tribe, his son Judah, the honor that monarchy would come from the tribe of Judah, which is very interesting because the first king of Israel was not from Judah, was actually from Benjamin, King Saul. And we know that Esther was a relative of King Saul. So how in the world did this switch? Jacob gives a blessing that the monarchy will always be from Judah, and in slips a representative of the tribe of Benjamin, King Saul. What was their merit? That they merited to have the first king. That's a tremendous honor. You know, there's the gold medal and the silver and the bronze. Who remembers the silver? Who remembers the bronze? Maybe just the people that receive that medal. But the first, that's the big trophy. So we quoted various sources that tell us how that was done. It was done through the venue that Benjamin, the leaders of Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, they had a special trait. They had the tremendous trait that when there was a question whether they should sacrifice themselves, their lives, for the Jewish people, for God, for God's commandments, they put their own intellect and thought process on a back burner, and they put that on the side, and instead they kind of took a blind approach, one might say, against their rationality. And because of this trait of a person putting their own wisdom, knowledge, intellect on a back burner and just saying, this doesn't matter. What my conclusion that came up is irrelevant, because above my intellect is God's will. That was why the tribe of Benjamin merited to be the first king of Israel. And that was the platform for King Saul to continue this torch that Benjamin symbolized, to continue forward with that same platform of action. We mentioned that there are three cases with King Saul where he uprooted the foundation of his own tribe, he uprooted his own self by going against the accomplishments and the flag and the ideology of his own tribe. And we mentioned one out of the three. Today we'll continue with God's help on the other two. The first one was when the prophet Shmuel, when he anointed King Saul to be king of Israel, many of the Jewish people gave gifts to King Saul and blessed him. There was a group of people that looked at King Saul, and King Saul was a very humble person, and they looked at him and they pointed at him in front of others in the public, and they said, "Look at this guy." They pointed to him. This kind of person, he's going to save the Jewish people, and they embarrassed him. Now the law of the Torah is that a king is not allowed to forgive such incidents. When you're a king, you are not allowed to forego your honor, because your honor is the honor of God. So you have to punish perpetrators. That was not the case. Saul put together some kind of, there's different opinions amongst the commentators, but he put together some kind of theory of his why it wasn't a good idea to punish the perpetrators, those that embarrassed him in public, embarrassed the king of Israel. Whatever IQ King Saul had, however keen he was in his thinking and cognate process of his thoughts, however that might have played out, there is the law of Hashem. And Hashem knows better than we do. No matter how smart we think we are, how keen, clever, original, we have to always put ourselves and our thinking on a back burner and perform God's will. So this was the first incident with King Saul, that he did not do that. This point that earned his tribe to become the first king of Israel uprooted that principle. Okay, that was last week. Moving right along. Case number 2. This is based on the book of Shmuel, Samuel, book 1 of Samuel, on the 13th chapter. The prophet Shmuel, Samuel, tells King Saul that before going to war against the Philistines, he must wait to sacrifice various animals to God. He must wait until Samuel will return after 7 days. Once King Saul has waited 7 days and the prophet Samuel has returned, then King Saul is allowed to sacrifice these animals and begin the war against the Philistines. Now, to understand how lopsided this war was, the Jewish people had 3,000 men prepared for this war. The Philistines, as far as soldiers are concerned, there's no number, but it says in the Torah that they were numerous as the sand of the beach. Well, that's a lot of people. As far as chariots are concerned, they had 30,000 chariots, the Philistines, and they had 6,000 cavalry against 3,000 Jews. So this is a pretty hairy situation that the Jewish people are in. Anyways, comes day 7. King Saul, he's looking right, left, forward, backwards. He's putting on his binoculars and looking for where is Shmuel, because situation is getting very, very difficult. It's heating up. There's going to be a war. It's going to break out any second. So, right for now, Shmuel is nowhere to be found. So what does King Saul do? Shmuel told him, wait. You must wait for me and wait for the 7-day period and wait till I arrive. But King Saul, so to speak, knows better. And it's a danger to the Jewish people, and the danger overrides the commandments. Whatever logic he brought, he felt that it was the right thing in order to save the Jewish people. He thought it was the right thing that even though Shmuel is not anywhere to be found right now, I'm going to sacrifice the animals and we're going to go out to war to fight. That's what he did. And then Shmuel arrives, of course. Murphy's theory, when you need him, he's not there, and then when you don't need him, all of a sudden he arrives, of course. And he is rebuked and reprimanded very harshly by Shmuel. Tells him, I told you, the word of a prophet, which is the word of God, whatever logic, whatever thought process you went through, you made a mistake. You got to put that all on the back burner, on the side. When you have a commandment from a prophet, which is a commandment from God, that takes precedence, and not our logic and rationale. So that's case number 2. We have the same exact ingredients so far in these 2 cases, where King Saul is acting based on his logic and thinking and perspective and intellect. Very nice. But it almost must be put on the side when it comes to doing God's will and God's Torah. Last but not least, to say the least, we have case number 3. King Saul is given a commandment by Shmuel via God that it is time to destroy the king of Amalek, Agag, and anyone connected to Amalek, that is women, children, men, animals, anything that has any connection to Amalek must be eliminated. As we know, there's a positive commandment to eliminate the memory of this evil nation called Amalek. Okay, so what happens? Shmuel comes after the war against Amalek. He wants to see the results, and believe it or not, he's looking around and meh, meh. What's this? What is going on here? I hear sheep. I hear goats. And this is like the goats of Amalek. These are the sheep, the animals of Amalek. But I don't understand, Shmuel is saying. God gave a specific commandment to eliminate the animals. And to make things worse, all of a sudden he sees the king of Amalek, Agag, alive and well. What in the world is going on? And now the most unusual. If you look in the verses, okay, we're in Samuel 1, we're in the 15th chapter. Saul does not say, I'm sorry. Actually, he's convinced 100% that he acted in the proper manner. If you look in the verses, amazing. And he's not he's not a liar. He really believes in his own mind. King Saul believes that he acted properly. Let's see, what was he basing his actions which contradict God's commandment to eliminate any semblance of Amalek? Our first source is that in the tractate of Yoma, page 22, side B. An interesting conversation. God says to King Saul, go and destroy Amalek. So, King Saul, so to speak, he puts on his a thinking cap, crown, I guess if you're the king, and then he starts with the following theory, logic. He says, if the Torah teaches us that if one person is found dead in a community, then there's this entire investigation. We investigate the leaders of the Jewish people. Maybe there was maybe they did not, were negligent in their responsibilities of protecting people. And if we can't find the perpetrators, then we bring a certain calf and we slaughter it. How much more so if for one person we have to do an entire investigation and we must bring this calf and slaughter it? How much more so to kill an entire nation? How many calves, how many sacrifices one must bring for killing numerous amounts of people? And then King Saul continues with his thinking cap. If the nation of Amalek are guilty, then they should be killed. But what do the animals have to do with anything? Why are the animals guilty? I mean, it seems like King Saul, he was the founder of, the Humane Society for Animals. And then he continues, and if the elders of Amalek sinned, I can understand. They're the sinners. But how about children? Why should I kill children? Children don't sin. Babies don't sin. A heavenly voice came out and said, King Saul, don't be so righteous. God is righteous. God is merciful. We are not more merciful than God. If God said to do this commandment, to wipe them out, man, women, children, animals, that is mercy in the world. King Saul is 100% convinced that his thinking process, that he's reached the truth. God gave him a commandment, prophet gave him commandment, but King Saul, he pulls out his logic, his rationale, his IQ, and it just can't be, because it doesn't add up in my brain. It just doesn't add up. So he doesn't destroy Amalek. Second source, what was in the mindset of King Saul? In an amazing commentator, the Malbim, as a commentator on the Torah and also on the prophets, he writes an amazing thing. He says, if you look at the verse in the prophets, Shmuel, chapter 15, it says that King Saul had a he had a fight in a riverbed. Vayerev banachal. What was this dispute? Dispute, maybe, is a better word. Why is the Torah telling us that King Saul had a dispute in a riverbed? What does that mean? And the Malbim comes out with an amazing, just to hear this, is worth coming. He says that King Saul was looking for a political reason why to go out and fight against the nation of Amalek. King Saul did not feel comfortable with going out to fight against the nation when there's no political argument or disagreement to go to war for. I'm going to go to war because I have a commandment to destroy a nation? How's that going to look? That doesn't sound too politically correct. You have to give, in Germany, in the Holocaust, the Germans used all kinds of notions why it was important to fight against the Jewish people. They threw out all kinds of ills that the Jewish people were involved in, or they're taking our jobs, they're taking our women. You have to have something concrete to go and fight, whether it's true or not, fake news or not. It's a different issue. But you got to give people ammunition. You have to give them. Rabbi Yisrael of Salant, the ethical founder of the Musar movement, has an amazing line. He said, there's never been a robber that has robbed before he made the objects his. What does that mean? That when a robber goes out, he can't just go out and rob. He has to come up with some kind of idea in his head, some kind of ideology that really this belongs to me. The rich people are really taking what belongs also to me. So if I go to a rich person, it's really mine. It just happens to be the government is cozy with all the rich people, but it's on our backs, so it's really my money. So that's what's going on over here. King Saul, the Malbim says that King Saul did not feel comfortable with saying that this, you know why we're going out to war? Because it's commandment of God to eradicate Amalek. Women, children, babies, animals, that's the mitzvah. No, he's looking, he's arguing. Banachal, what does that mean? Nachal is a place, is a geographic location. He was claiming that the reason why he's going out to fight against Amalek is a political, because they're claiming some of our land, this riverbed and other places. That's why we're going out to war. Not because of a commandment. That's not politically correct to go out because of a commandment, because it's a milchemet mitzvah, it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment to go out to war. No, I have to come up with something logical in my head. And to give it to others, we have to come up with something logical. Oh, we're going to come up. You know what? You know why we went out to fight against? Because they were coming to take our land. In the book, Questions and Answers, Onig Yom Tov, in the beginning of the book, on number 6, says an amazing idea. He asked the question, how could it be? Shmuel comes up to King Saul and he says, listen, you had a commandment, you went against God. And King Saul, if you look at his words, he's 100% convinced that he did the right thing. How could this be? And then the book, Onig Yom Tov, says an amazing line. Amazing, unbelievable. He said that here King Saul uses vast Torah knowledge and he came up with a conclusion, listen to this one, that you do not have to kill the animals, you do not have to destroy the animals as long as there is at least one member of the Amalek nation alive. So as long as I keep at least one member of the Amalek nation alive, I have no obligation to destroy the animals. Destroying the animals comes only after Amalek has been destroyed. I mean, can you believe this? So therefore, King Shaul, he didn't bat an eye. He was certain with his tremendous, he was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, scholar. And he used his vast Torah knowledge to come up with this conclusion. So I didn't do anything wrong. And he meant it. It wasn't like he was playing a game. Police come to you, oh, I didn't do anything. But you know inside, yeah, you did something wrong. No! He's convinced that he did what was correct. He used his thinking process, his tremendous Torah knowledge. And this were the conclusions. This must be the law. There's a commandment of God through the prophet. Okay. But my theory takes precedence. So, was there a solid base? Yeah, there was a solid base to what he was talking about. But he was wrong, dead wrong. Last but not least, in the same vein, the Sfat Emet tells us in his work on Purim, the year of 5638. It's approximately 138 years ago. He writes an amazing thing. Why did Saul leave the king of Amalek alive? Because of the fact that there were certain people that convinced him. Now, the Sfat Emet does not say who these people were. It could be that the Amalekim were able to convince King Saul that it was the proper way to act to have mercy on them. It was the proper thing. It was the Jewish way. It was the Torah way to have mercy on them. Or it could be some of the advisors of King Saul advised him to have mercy on these wicked people. This, the Sfat Emet points out that this was the same situation hundreds of years later in the time of Purim, where Haman was sure that he would be able to convince the Jews to have mercy on him. Why? He was basing his theory on the success that people had on the Jewish king Saul when they were able to convince that the right, proper Jewish idea was to have mercy on them. And Haman was sure. Didn't play out that way for Haman. But that's what he was basing it on. So folks, it's an amazing thing. Because of all of this, because of King Saul's logic, perspective, theories, IQ, brilliance, Torah knowledge. He created a situation where Agag, the king of Amalek, was alive. Eventually, he had relations with a woman, and eventually, some generations later, came a soul named Haman, who almost destroyed, was this close to destroying the Jewish people. It's an amazing thing. When we go off and we decide, based on our theories and intellect and rationality, we decide what's the best, this could bring a situation of the destruction of the Jewish people. This is a destruction of our souls, the Jewish soul. This is the destruction of the Jewish people. That's the idea behind here. If I don't put all of my intellect and greatness and knowledge on a back burner to God's will, these are all ingredients for destruction. So, let's fast forward. Mordechai, in the time of Purim, he realizes that in order to save the Jewish people, in order to save the family, the father's family of Esther, which is King Saul, in order to rectify the damage that he had done in allowing the king of Amalek to stay alive, and then eventually generations later bringing this modern day Hitler, Haman, into the world, who almost very close came to destroying the Jewish people. So he understood, Mordechai understood that in order to save the Jewish people and to rectify the sin of the family of Esther, that the Jewish people, Mordechai and Esther, they would have to put their cognate thinking process on the back burner and go ahead and do the opposite of what they felt was the right measures to take. According to their thinking process, it was the right thing to wait. We have another 11 months. Esther feels certain that she will be called in a short amount of time. Don't endanger her. No! We put all our ideology, all our philosophy, all our great thinking processes on the back burner, and we go out to save the Jewish people against all odds. That's what happened. That is why Mordechai, against all odds and against rationale and against our human way of thinking, he went against all that. Rabbi, the ethical teacher of the Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz, he wrote in his book the following. He said, it is known when there is a question of saving the Jewish people, there is no room for calculations, for theories. We must act immediately. Keep your calculations for another time, not right now. When it comes to the saving of the Jewish people, that's all on the side. And we must do everything in our capability to go out and save the Jewish people. Throw out the window your calculations. And even you must throw out your calculations when you come up with the conclusion that perhaps what I'm going to do is going to put me in a dangerous situation, even in such a case. And that is why Rabbi Shmulevitz writes, that is explaining the actions of Mordechai and Esther. What in the world are you going and endangering Esther? Well, this is to save the Jewish people. And we must rectify. We ask the question, why was Mordechai harping on Esther's father's family and not mother? Well, this is the whole idea. Esther came into the world in order to rectify and to correct what her ancestor, who she was connected on a soul level to King Saul, many similarities to Princess Esther and King Saul. So she came to the world to rectify what was his fall, what was King Saul's transgression. That in the three actions that we mentioned, when he kept quiet, when he was embarrassed, and the Jewish law is different, that he must punish. When it came to waiting for the prophet 7 days, Shmuel, he came up with a different conclusion. When it came to a commandment through the prophet and through God to destroy Amalek, he came to a different conclusion. How did he come every single time to a different conclusion? Because he was a genius. And he understood better. And that had to be thrown away. That had to be thrown away. When it comes time to save the Jewish people, we go right now. We're not waiting 11 months. We're going right this second to save the Jewish people and also to rectify the sin, the transgression of King Saul. And dear friends, that brings us to our first question. Now we will answer it. What in the world is going on this festival of Purim? For all our lives, for the entire year, we are told in numerous sources. Just give one. It says in Tanchuma, portion Shmini. It says there, depending on what edition you have, it's either the 11th paragraph or the 14th paragraph. It says that drinking of wine, excess drinking of wine brings, number one, to all the three cardinal sins. What are those? Idol worshipping, murder, and immodest sexual behavior. But not only that, our sages go on to tell us that an excess of drinking of wine brings us to every single sin in the book. That's how serious it is. We could spend a day or 2 days just going over all the sources that teach us how far we must stay away from alcohol and from wine. And all of a sudden Purim comes, we get the green light. Not only that, we have to intoxicate ourselves that we don't know the difference between blessed is Mordechai and cursed. We don't know anymore the difference. What in the world is going on over here? Let's look at the Chavetz Chaim, the Mishnah Brura. In the Code of Jewish Law, the Chavetz Chaim, in Orach Chaim 695-2. This is actually not in the Mishnah Brura part, but in Biur Halacha of the Chavetz Chaim. So, Listen to the words I'm translating here. On the commandment, we are told in this law, it says a person must intoxicate themselves, chayav inish, until they do not know the difference between blessed Mordechai and cursed Haman. And listen to the words of the Chafetz Chaim. He writes, how could it be that our sages put a obligation on the Jewish people to do something that we are told in the 5 books of Moses, in the prophets, and in the scriptures, to stay away from such an act? It tells us how grave it is to come close to this stuff. And then he quotes various commentators who ask the same question. And then they tell us that, you know why? Because in order for us to remember the miracles that took place during the time of Purim, most of the miracles occurred during a banquet where people were drinking. So if you look, for example, when Princess Vashti was tossed out, it was at a banquet where people were drinking. And when you look at when it was decided that Haman was going to be destroyed at the party of Esther, banquet of Esther, that was also with wine and drinking. So this is brought down by many of the Jewish law commentators, that this is the reason behind drinking on Purim. Okay, to remember that. Okay, that's very nice, folks. Very nice. However, this does not explain why we have to have more than a sip of wine. I can understand every Jew has to say a blessing and drink, 86 grams of wine, just to remember all the tremendous miracles that happened to the Jewish people through these kinds of these drinking affairs, bars. I can understand, but what is this to become intoxicated and not know the difference between Mordechai and Haman? That I don't get. So comes the Chafetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, and he says, calm down. He quotes a few different Jewish law authorities that say what it says in the Code of Jewish Law, based on, of course, the Talmud, that a person is obligated, doesn't really mean obligated. It means that it is a good thing to do, but if you don't do it, you have not transgressed anything. If you're able to drink and not do negative actions, or not to miss various commandments during the day. If you're able to, what they say, if you're able to, watch your liquor and your wine, so then that would be a good thing to do. And then he goes on, he writes this. He quotes it in the name of the Meiri. The Meiri says that though it is a law to drink alcoholic beverages or wine, there's a discrepancy amongst the law authorities whether it has to be just wine or could it be wine and other intoxicated beverages. However, we are not commanded. This is the Chafetz Chaim bringing down the Meiri. We're not commanded to become drunk and embarrass ourselves on Purim Day, because the mitzvah of Purim Day is to be happy and come close to God, not to become crazy and a monster. A lot of times you see people on the streets, they become like, these crazy, monstrous kind of people. That's not the idea here. The idea is that through a little bit of drinking, then we uplift ourselves and our souls, etc., and become closer to God, and we thank God for all the miracles. Okay, so, as they say, there must be 50 ways to leave your lover. There must be 50 ways to get out of becoming drunk on Purim. Okay, so the Chavetz Chaim found us one of those 50 ways. However, with that said, and to realize that there are Jewish law authorities that take this stand, that it is not a commandment, it is not a custom to become drunk. A person must drink a little bit more than they're accustomed to, or a person must drink a little bit and then go to sleep. There's a lot of ways out. But with all that said and done, can we just say, okay, that's all, folks? No. Listen to the words of the Seder Hayom. That's Rabbi Moshe Makir. By the way, Rabbi Moshe Makir, he is the one in his book. We say, when a Jew gets up every morning, we always say the first thing before we even wash our hands, we say, we thank God for returning our souls. That was a prayer that was instituted by this book. It's written in his book, and the various commentators took it from there. So tomorrow morning when you get up, you remember that you heard it here from this book. I will summarize the Seder Hayom on page 254. Rabbi Moshe Makir, he writes the following. He brings many opinions that we can sort of escape the obligation of becoming drunk, that we do not realize the difference between the blessing of Mordechai and the curse of Haman. But one by one, Rabbi Moshe Makir, the Seder Hayom, in his book, he does not agree. He is able to reject one after another. He rejects their opinion. And he says the bottom line is, and he says not only in his name, he said the majority of Jewish law opinion, what I'm telling you is not my personal opinion, and I'm a minority opinion. No, the majority of opinions say that, you know what? That the law is the law, that a person must become intoxicated, that he does not know the difference. It means that you come on Purim, you're so smashed, you're so plastered, and you don't know anymore. If someone says that Haman is blessed, you don't know if that's correct or not. You're totally plastered. Amazing. That is the majority opinion. So he says, one's intellect must become so tainted that he does not know the difference. Folks, this is an amazing point. Let's go back one step. We said that the whole story, the story of Purim, the foundation of Purim, what do we come out with after the holiday? What do we come out with? We must come out to have faith in Hashem, trust in Hashem, and do God's will. And even though our intellect, our knowledge, our IQ, wisdom, ideology comes to a different conclusion, Purim teaches us to put that all on the back burner, put it on the side, and go on a straight path, go on the Torah path. Listen to what God is saying. It goes against your personality, it goes against your ideology, so let it be. So folks, if you have to think, what type of beverage or food represents more than any other beverage or food? Putting our intellect, our cognitive thinking on a back burner, on the side. What beverage, more than anything else, brings us to a total neglect of our intellect? It's becoming drunk. The same principle. Mordechai telling Esther, I understand your theory. I understand your reasoning. Makes a lot of sense. But right now, we got into this entire mess because of such intellectual, philosophical thinking. This is how we got in the mess of King Saul and leaving Agag, the king of Amalek, alive, and now bringing Haman to destroy the Jewish people. We have to rectify this sin. And the sin, the way that we rectify is that on every single year on Purim, we drink and we become intoxicated, that we no longer think straight. Our thinking has no bearing on reality. We are mivatel et atzmeinu. We nullify ourselves. To what? To God's will. To the Torah. To the commandments. Doesn't matter what I think. That is exactly the same idea. Folks, I was exercising today and I was listening to a class by Rabbi Daniel Gladstein. And out of the blue, he brings out a certain point, and all of a sudden I said, I cannot believe it. This is this morning, a few hours ago. He brings out, he's talking about whatever subject, he's talking about Abraham and the number 74, nothing to do with our subject here. But he had a point here that is an amazing point, which goes right into what we're talking about. This is an amazing new light. It says in the Talmud, and it's brought down in the Code of Jewish Law, we said 695, paragraph 2, Chayav inish lebesume, ad lo yada. A Jew is obligated to intoxicate themselves until they do not know the difference. Ad lo yada. Listen to this. Ad, until you do not know. Ad. It is said, Rabbi Gladstein brought it out in the name of the Arizal. I spoke to my Rabbi Moshe Tzuriel, afterwards, because I looked it up in the Arizal, I could not find it. Rabbi Tzuriel told me, my rabbi told me, that this is said in the name of the Arizal, though we're not sure, we don't have it in our possession today. It might very well have been that the Arizal said it. So it's said in the name of the Arizal. We say every day at the end of the morning prayers that to have faith in God, the words are in Hebrew, V'yivduchu v'cha yudei shemecha. One second. V'yivduchu V'yivtechu b'Hashem adei ad. There we go. You have to have faith in God and until eternity. Adei ad. Until in eternity. It uses the word ad. In the name of the Arizal, listen to this. The word ad is numerical value is 74. The word bitachon, faith in God, is 75. And we know that there is a principle in numerical values of words that you're allowed to use the word itself is considered to be 1, which means you have the numerical values of the letters, and then you have the word itself is +1, plus the word. So, amazing thing that ad is 74 and bitachon is 75. And in the name of the Arizal it is written that the word ad, whenever you see the word in the Torah ad, this represents a word of placing our faith in God. Placing our faith in God. The number 74 represents faith in God, which is an amazing thing. So, the Code of Jewish Law tells us that a Jew must become intoxicated ad. What does it mean, ad? It means that I'm throwing away. Today on Purim, and it's a lesson. It's a Jewish lesson for the entire year. We know that holidays, it's not just for today that I keep the holiday. The holidays are supposed to be keeping with us the entire year until next year. These are principles that we must put in life. So what is the idea here? It's amazing how it works out. The Torah, the law, the Talmud, and the Jewish law tells us a person must become intoxicated ad. What does that mean? Ad, we said, is the word of faith. Trusting in Hashem. We trust in ourselves. We trust in our logic. We trust in our IQ. We trust in our keenness. We're so smart. And comes Purim. And the words of this halacha are tremendous. According to the Arizal, it didn't have to use the word ad. It could have said something else. That a person must become intoxicated. Okay? Could have used different words. But it says ad. Until they do not know. Exactly what we're talking about here. When we realize that God's in control. When we realize that how smart we are. What kind of IQ we have. How intelligent we are. How keen, smart, brilliant. It all doesn't mean one iota. When we go out and we must act, whether it's to save the Jewish people, whether it's situations in our life, when we put everything aside, all our theology, all our ideology, all our keenness on the side, and we go with God. We go with the commandments. We go with what the Torah is telling us to do, though it might negate our conclusions, our brilliant conclusions. Because God in the Torah and the commandments are you don't have a number, trillion, whatever, much greater than that. So that basically is the idea. So this year, folks, Alechaim to everybody over here. Alechaim also to keep, we have our, our officer, our leader, Yekutiel Ben Yaakov, Yekutiel Reuven, who was in a car accident. Put him in your prayers. And we pray that God should send him a speedy refuah shleima, speedy recovery to everybody. But when we come this year, and once again, there are many opinions in the Code of Jewish Law, and there's many ways out that a person does not become intoxicated. Could be it's talking about certain people that are Talmidei Chachamim, they could become intoxicated. If I've seen in my life different tremendous Torah scholars, and beauty, Torah comes out. When they're intoxicated, beauty comes out. Not, unfortunately, many of us, when we have one or too many drinks, then, what comes out of us is maybe just vomiting and, bad words, cuss words, and improper behavior. So we should stay away from that stuff. I'm not, God forbid, telling people out there to get plastered and, get stoned out there. But just remember this idea, tremendous idea. Every Purim, remember Mordechai sending in Esther to the quarters of the king against odds, against all logic, endangering her in order to save the Jewish people, to rectify. And this is the idea behind Purim, that we are little, we are midgets, compared to God's knowledge, compared to God's commandments and Torah. And we must always put ourselves second behind God's will, Torah, and commandments. If we come out of Purim with that thinking, then Purim was definitely worthwhile.